Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. We are going to be speaking today about utilizing technology to facilitate growth for your dental business. My name is Vance Taylor. I am Schein One's National Sales Manager for Special Markets. So in our world, special markets is defined as any of our non-traditional dental health models, including group practice and DSO. I've been with the organization for 15 years, and my team primarily focuses on finding and implementing technology solutions to help multi-site dental group practices and DSOs achieve their growth goals. Joining me today is Adam McDaniel, our Director of Product Management for Group Practice and DSO. Adam?
Good to be here.
Yeah.
Excited. My name's Adam. I've been with Henry Schein for 18 years. Spent a lot of time working in product management. Basically what product management does is we work with our customers to try to figure out what problems they have, and then we develop technologies or solutions to solve the problems.
Excellent. So Adam and I go way back. We've worked together for 13 years.
Yeah.
He's my former boss. So let's talk for a minute, Adam, if we can, about what group practices and multi-site dental organizations are experiencing now and some of the challenges we've seen. So in my capacity, for example, being out in the field and working with these organizations for the better part of a decade and a half, we started to see some common themes. So as we've expanded our group practice, now we have multiple locations, we run into issues, whether it's cash flow, maintaining our profitability, employee satisfaction, patient satisfaction, all these things, because as you grow and as you multiply, your challenges or your problems will also multiply or exacerbate. Right.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a good example. We have a customer in Texas who's using our enterprise platform. They've got now I think 26, 27 locations. When we met them, they had gotten to right about 20 locations, and they were running a distributed, non-centralized environment, meaning each of those locations had their own practice management software running on their own database in their own building. And so the challenge that they were running into is because they weren't centralized and they weren't creating any sort of scale, their profitability was getting tighter and tighter the more that they grew, because their overhead was increasing, but their production or their potential to produce wasn't necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So they were in this sort of holding pattern where every so often they had to sell off their bottom performing practices. It was a big problem for them because the profitability for the DSO at large was struggling under the weight of those underperforming practices. So long story short, we got them on a centralized system. They greatly reduced their cost, their human capital overhead as a result of that, and now they've been able to reignite their growth plan. So what other challenges, that's one example. From more of a technology perspective, what are some of the challenges that you've seen and some of the things that you're solving with your team on the product side?
Yeah, I think the story that you bring up is a great example of an organization who has a drive to grow and a drive to expand and really achieve that centralization and consolidation, but they don't have the technology, or they don't make the technology choices to help them get there. One of the things that we see quite frequently is the ability for a group practice, whether they're 3 locations or 30 locations, but the ability for them to get access to their data is critical. That data, if you're in a decentralized system, you've got now however many locations you've got, or even mobile units or outreach programs that you may have, you've got separate databases now, and that patient data is extremely valuable. For a lot of different things. You can use that patient data for marketing, for getting your patients to come back in for their annual checkups or recare every 6 months. You can use that for better understanding if your marketing programs are working to get people in. You can use that to also understand how your teams are performing. But if that data is not in the same place, it's a challenge for you to try to grab that information from all of those different locations, have it come into a standardized format, and then take that data from there and make it better. So what we're doing on our software solutions is we're making that data so it's available in one single space and one single place, consolidated, so that you can easily have access to it and it's readily available.
Yeah, you said something interesting. You said centralized and standardized, and I think that it's a need that's lost on some of these smaller groups especially, which is the data becomes the lexicon for your business.
Yeah.
And if it's not standardized between locations, your ability to visualize and analyze that data for whatever purpose, we want to boost our patient acquisition rate or our collection rate or reduce our churn, you can't do it if every location or each staff member at each location is reading from a different dictionary, right?
Yeah,
Or speaking a different
just,
language.
just a simple example, and this is something that people don't think about a lot, is let's say your discount code in one location for a family and friends discount or a student discount is discount code 5. But another location with a separate database is using discount code 7. Well, now you have a situation where when you come to standardize that data and put it in one place, you now have to translate and you have to understand, oh wait, that location's 7, this one's 5. It just becomes really difficult for them to manage it.
Yeah, how do you decide if it's worth participating in American Express Merchant Services if you've got 4 offices and they all call that payment code something different?
Exactly.
And now you try to look at your spend versus your production, and the numbers are severely skewed, right? Because you're not getting all of the data because it's misnamed, right?
And it's a lot of those small things that I don't think growing DSOs or growing practices who are adding locations really think about and consider, because their focus, technology is part of the focus, but their focus is on obviously the team and driving some efficiencies there and trying to standardize some of those processes. But sometimes some of those small little things on the technology side get lost.
Great. All right, so that was a really interesting conversation, I think, about some of the challenges that our customers are facing. We both mentioned at a couple of points the term centralization. So I just want to level set with the audience and talk about what we mean when we say centralization. So, I mean, obviously in its basic construct, what we're talking about is taking this model of multiple databases, one at each location, and pulling that into a single centralized database. And then what we're going to be talking about are all of the value, benefits, and outcomes that creates. But more importantly, and before we get to that, what I want to make sure that the audience understands is centralizing your data is really only one component of it. It's the infrastructure piece of centralization, but it's so much more than that for your business. Centralization is it's a reconstruction of your business model itself.
Yeah.
It's positioning your people and your workflows and matching that up with your vision, and then utilizing the technology to facilitate it. So buying my point is investing in the technology, not just the time, but the money.
Just one piece.
Just to do it doesn't necessarily, warrant any fruit for the business. It'd be like if I go buy a boat and I never take it out on the water, it's not really fulfilling its purpose.
Right.
It's now just an overhead for me. It's a burden, and this has happened. And so what's interesting for me and my group is as we go through the process of discovery with these groups, just because you have multiple locations does not necessarily mean centralization is right for you. So as much as we're here to help groups understand why this is so valuable, I think it's really important for them to also understand that in some cases it's not, and it has a lot to do with not just your goals and vision, but also your willingness and ability to commit to a paradigm shift within your business, right?
Right. Yeah, so there's this change management piece that has to take place along with centralization. It's not just a step of a technology centralization. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's right. And so the natural question then that I get when I speak about centralization and things at some of the various conferences around the country is, so when am I big enough to centralize? And it's one of those I think misnomers in the industry, which is at a certain number of locations or a certain dollar of production or collections, it's time to centralize. And while there are certainly stages to growth that we need to be cognizant of, like a group that's only producing $2 or $3 million a year can't go hire a CEO. Right. It's economically impossible, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, the indicator or the trigger for when you should centralize your group has less to do with how much you're producing or how many locations you have, and more to do with your vision, growth strategy, and goals and time frame for all of those.
Yeah,
right?
I completely agree. I think to your point, it is a misnomer in this industry because they think, well, if I achieve a certain level, then now my next step is I have to centralize everything, call center, CBO, all of those types of things. When, to your point, the reality is it really is process and a culture change and a change management. And can the centralization really benefit you if you're willing to do it, right? If you're willing to go through that process.
Right.
So
in addition to obviously on the cultural side and the staffing side and the human capital side, from a when do I centralize question, what kind of insights do you have from a technology perspective as it relates to centralization in general? Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? What does it mean for me from a technology footprint and impact perspective?
Yeah, so I think from a technology perspective, there's a couple of things. Like we always consider like the databases that we talked about. Is, a key to centralization is, now I've got all of these disparate databases and I bring them together. What are the benefits? And the benefits there are huge. But they also, we need to consider the fact that when we're centralizing technology, we're also taking that IT role that's in a DSO or a growing group practice, and we're centralizing a lot of functions there, which is really great because you've got a situation where you're doing, let's say you have 2 locations or 3 locations, and you have a number of desktops that you need to manage and a number of instances of people's workstations that you need to take care of and handle. Well, from an IT perspective, centralization gives you the benefit of not needing to go and upgrade every single one of those computers for your practice management system. It also makes it easier for you to replace workstations now, because through virtualization and through other technologies, cloud technologies that are out there, you don't have to be able to have every single workstation be a critical component of your practice. It's just something that it's access to the bigger...
It's an access point.
Yeah, it's an access point to a bigger system. And so I think that's one thing that, again, people think about the actual software, because we're software guys, and so when we talk to people, that's what they assume we want to talk about is, well, let's talk about your software. But what they don't consider or think about is, what about the IT overhead? What is the IT perspective? How do you manage IT in your growing organization? Is it something that you're going to do every location is responsible for their upgrades? Or is it something that, no, we definitely want to have an IT group that's at the corporate office? If you're going to start centralizing some of those functions like IT, then at that point you start to need to centralize some of your technology decisions too. Yeah. And it's more than just practice management. I mean, we're a practice management software company, so we think about practice management, but it's a lot more than that. It's your email, it's your file storage, it's all of those other things that you need to start to consider from an IT perspective, that centralization really gives you great benefits there.
Yeah. So, what I think is really interesting about this is we've talked about the challenges that these groups are facing and a little bit about how centralization can start to help by standardizing data and allowing these groups to take advantage of centralized data to change workflows and staffing and logistics and paradigms and all of that. So I think the other thing that's important for these groups to realize is that patient record now in a centralized environment is unique. There's only one instance of it.
Right.
And when you consider the alternative, which is that patient's record, if that patient goes to my location across town and is treated there for some reason, whether it's first available appointment or the specialist is exactly. Yeah. Now I've got 2 instances of that record. They've been duplicated. And now the onus falls to me to manage the health history, make sure that it's consistent. If they're allergic to penicillin here, they've got to be allergic to penicillin here, or my risk goes up as a healthcare provider. Managing their AR and ensuring that we've got a consolidated balance, that we're collecting the right amount at this office, even though they're going to this other office as their primary home. All of those problems, right? And so depending on the frequency with which an organization cross schedules, and I'll give you a great example, perio groups oftentimes expand into multi-site really maybe less out of strategic vision and more out of necessity, right? They're very high volume. Yep. Typically they're Medicaid, which means they have to be high volume to be profitable. And so as they grow and expand, they might be booked out 3, 4, 5, 6 months in advance. And so they'll literally add a second or third location as a pressure release valve. And they'll immediately start scheduling into that location for their existing patient base, already registered. We've already got their paperwork, their insurance information, their open treatment plan. It's all in my current database. And now I've added another one, right? I remember I walked into a group practice, a Pido group practice up in Washington State. This was 9 years ago. And I sat down, and the 2 gals at the front desk were both head down on their computers, on their phones, just typing away furiously. And I was there for a meeting with the doctor, and I sat for a little while, about 10 minutes, and then they finally realized I was in their waiting room, and they came and grabbed me. And it turns out this was exactly what was happening there. multi-site Pido group that added another location 7 minutes away so that they could expand because they had so many patients. And they were using LogMeIn to split screen into their other database and try to manually duplicate these patient records. So the staff were miserable, the patients were at risk, the doctor was spending a fortune to pay those girls to do that work.
Yeah.
So fast forward now, they're on our enterprise centralized system. Those two girls, by the way, are both executives on his management team, and they've grown and expanded their business as a result. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think people, when they think centralization, they think about data and reporting. They think about, oh, this gives me better reports, so I can get a report across all my locations about how we're doing and those types of things. But to your point, they don't consider it from the patient's perspective that actually having one clinical record makes your patients safer. Makes you less liable for risk and problems that happen when you have multiple records. And so that's the thing I don't think people consider enough, is the downstream effect to your patient when you have multiple records. And I think in the back of their minds, they're thinking, we'll figure it out. We'll do the LogMeIn, or we're not there all the time. We're only there a few days a week, and so the crossover is bad. Or we don't have that many patients go over to those locations. That most of the time they stay in their home office, and we hear that quite a bit when we talk to people of different makes and different types of specialties or different types of DSOs. But it's interesting because when you actually take a look at their data, so when we get their data in here and we start to do a conversion, or we start to look at their patient records, it's surprising the overlap, the number of patient records that are duplicated in multiple databases, and it's pretty surprising to them too. And so I completely agree with you, Vance, that I think that as you're growing, you need to consider the fact that that patient record needs to be singular. It needs to be unique, and it needs to be something that your patients can trust, that no matter where they visit in your entire organization, even consider this. I mean, even if you only have a few locations, but you have a call center, if that call center has to have a separate patient record, or they're logging in, they might have patient data that's duplicated if you don't have a centralized system too. And so that causes issues and causes problems from a data integrity perspective, but most importantly is from a patient care perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we've talked about the lexicon, which are basically the definitions that run your business, being centralized and the benefit. We've talked about the patient record being centralized and unique and the benefit. But there's another element, which is the staff and provider login. So if we really want to grow and be lean and be efficient, I might very well need my staff to cover shifts or see patients at 1 or 2 or 3 different locations on any given day of the week, right? And so
no, I think that's completely right, because you see when we talk about centralization, they talk about having consolidated billing and those types of things, but to your point, you now have these great human assets that are patient facing, and you want to be able to leverage them for cover or things like that for different offices or family situations that arise for an employee or something like that. And being able to have one login access is really important.
Well, it's interesting because there's sort of an industry maxim that talks about operatory design, that states when you're designing or building a new practice, you want the operatory to facilitate any provider performing any procedure on any patient at any time, which means the operatory is ambidextrous, it's neutral in the way that it's configured so that I can load an oral surgery kit or a hygiene kit or an endo kit for any of those specialists at any given time. And that way, from a scheduling perspective, I'm not limited. I can maximize my production on any given day, right? So that's kind of a concept in operatory design. Where it applies here, I think, and why it's so important that we have a single centralized system with user login anywhere, is that now my staff in the same way can perform their job function at any location as effectively as they can at their home practice. Yeah. And that allows me to have roaming specialists or cross-train assistants or front desk, back desk personnel at either location. And it's really important as you expand. If you're doing de novo build, you're not going to be open 5 days a week, 10 hours a day on day one. You're just not. Exactly, and so you're going to have to cover those shifts and gradually build up a staff relative to your buildup of patient, right? Personnel.
Yeah, I mean, you even have situations that I've seen this in group practices quite a bit when I travel to visit them, where you've got an office manager who is an office manager in one office, but then might end up covering another office as a scheduling coordinator, or might end up, a hygienist might end up doing a different role in a different practice, or an assistant might do something different.
Right.
We see it a lot in the front desk, because they try to fill different roles, whether it's billing, scheduling, whatever it may be. In different locations, they perform different roles. And so when you take that through to technology, then your technology should adapt to that. Your technology should say, oh, in this practice, you're this role, but it's the same login, but you're this role, and so let's adjust and make sure that you can use these functions. And again, that's something I don't think people in the long-term plans, when they're looking at it from a macro level, they don't really think about that, because that's something that's kind of like out of sight, out of mind, and we'll deal with it when we get there.
Right.
So
Adam, you mentioned something. I know we were talking about the benefit of a single patient record on that last section, but you mentioned how it will benefit a call center, and I'm curious from a technology perspective, as we're talking about centralized or support for centralized business operations.
Yeah.
Talk me through how we're helping groups facilitate call center, patient acquisition and managing their schedule and that type of workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. So the technology, when you think about a call center, there's great things you can leverage by having a call center infrastructure put together, as long as you approach it correctly. Because now you have an opportunity for even inbound calls, is what a majority of DSOs use that for, is their marketing number and those types of things, so they have a consistent experience on their inbound. But there's some outbound things that I can talk about in just a minute that I think are equally effective in a call center. But at that point, when the call comes in, you rely on your human capital to make sure that they're having the right conversation, asking the right questions, leading the patient to the right decision, whether it's do I schedule an appointment or schedule my treatment plan, whatever that may be. But then your technology needs to back that up. The technology needs to be there to assist. And one of the most important things is when you have a consolidated scheduling system that you can view across multiple locations, that helps you be able to zero in and find a time that works best for the patient. Because the patient's going to say, okay, I'd like to come in for my appointment, and if you have to remote in and out of multiple systems to try to find an open hole in the schedule, it's going to keep that patient on for way longer than they want to be, and it's also going to make it a poor experience for them to try to schedule the appointment. And you may not find the best hole in the schedule, you may not find the most appropriate time for them, or even the closest location, because you're going in and out of different systems. Now, a consolidated system that's centralized has one view of a schedule across multiple locations, so it's easier for you to finish that process and complete it in a timely fashion and also most efficiently. The other thing about technology that helps is that some people don't even want to talk to a person on the phone. They want to be able to book their appointment online, or they want to be able to go to a website and request an appointment, at least be able to fill out an appointment request form and say, here's my times I'm available, here's when I want to schedule, and then they'll be able to then follow that through. And so at Schein One, we really focus on the full appointment lifecycle management, but prior to them booking that appointment, there's this part about getting your appointment and realizing you need an appointment too. So there's, getting the patient from the decision of I need an appointment to actually book it, but prior to that, there's recognition of even making sure that they recognize that they need an appointment. And so patient acquisition tools like sending out email reminders for, hey, it's time for your 6-month cleaning, or sending out text messages to say, hey, it's time for that treatment plan to be scheduled. Those types of things are important, that help with the marketing effort that a group practice is doing to try to get demand into their office. There's tools that they can do inside of their practice management software or their patient relationship management software that we have that ties in with our practice management software. They can get those tools together that are a single solution that allows them to outreach to those patients, people who have outstanding treatment plans, people who are due, people who haven't been in a while. I mean, people who are, haven't come in and they really need to come in and take care of their oral health is something that our software also can grab that patient and kind of shake them a little bit virtually and say, hey, it's time for you to get in the schedule.
Yeah, so I think that whole suite of technology solutions, I think it's easy for us to talk about the tangible or the hard ROI that could be associated with leveraging those tools. So, for example, if I need fewer people to man the phones because I've got them centralized and they've got access to tools and technology so that I can get more out of those individual contributors. So, for example, one individual answering inbound marketing leads for 2 or 3 offices, right? There's an obvious measurable ROI. I'm now paying 1 person instead of 3 people. But I think there's
covering
some
overlap times, those types of things.
Yeah, but I think that there's some what I call soft ROI in there as well. I mean, it's harder to measure. You have to be aware of it, and you have to be strategic to take advantage of it. But it's there, and I think it's really important a concept, especially when you're talking about call center, because this is one of those concepts in the industry that's really partisan. People are either all for it and it's all they can talk about, and frankly it may not even be right for them, but they just think they want it because they keep hearing about it.
Everybody has one, right?
Mm-hmm. And then there's the people that are adamant that it's never possible to be profitable when you invest in call center infrastructure. And I think both extremes can probably be wrong in multiple cases, and what it really comes down to is are we leveraging the technology and the tools to streamline our people and make them efficient and effective and reduce our cost associated with those people? And then the soft ROI that comes into play there really comes back to patient experience. And this will sound a little bit counterintuitive for some people, because the big concern with call center for a lot of organizations is it's impersonal. I lose that touch. Wendy at the front desk that greets you when you come into the practice isn't going to be the person that answers the phone when you call, and that's a disconnect. But what I think we really need to focus on here is from an actual patient experience perspective. What I want to have happen when I pick up the phone and dial a number, when I'm threading that into my already busy, hectic day, but I know I need to do it, I want somebody to answer the phone first of all. 30% of calls that come into the front desk of a busy dental practice go unanswered right off the bat. So when you think about that pile of money you just spent on marketing for patient acquisition, so right off the top you're cutting 30%, throwing in the garbage, right? So that's obviously a big problem. But also for the patient's experience, even if that patient eventually comes back and gets that appointment booked after missing their first call, you're now fighting an uphill battle when it comes to patient satisfaction and NPS, right?
Net promoter score.
Net promoter score, yeah. And so in terms of patient experience, first of all, we want to answer the call. Second of all, we want the person that answers the phone to be highly trained and specialized in this, with the skill of converting new patient lead calls into appointments. And that conversion ratio, first of all, these groups need to know their number. So having the centralized data and having visibility into what my conversion rate actually is step one. And then secondly, now that I'm centralized, I can start pulling levers, measuring outcomes, and improving that conversion rate. So now I'm answering a higher percentage of the calls in the first place. I'm converting more of those to appointments. And this is the ROI that really starts to multiply as we grow. And if we're not doing that, but we're growing anyway, that's where you get into the situation like the group we talked about in Texas, where they're not creating any new profitability and the management company is actually losing money. Right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think in dental, it's a very, very divided group when it comes to call center. Yet let's take it out of dental for just 2 seconds and think about technology companies. The largest technology companies in the world that have websites that you can go to that website and buy something. Right there, they have an 800 number. And you call that 800 number, and it's the same thing you just said. They're highly skilled individuals that are trying to understand your needs, understand what it is that you want, and then trying to convert that. And so, it's the same thing in dentistry. When we bring it from a business perspective, you hit it right on, is that you can control that process a lot better from a call center perspective as long as you have the training, the people, and then the processes, and then the last is the technology to be able to bring that all together. Because part of that experience is your employees who are manning that call center to be able to successfully complete their job is to have the right technology and the right tools.
Right.
The last thing I didn't mention, just really quick, is that I talked about the fact that some people don't even want to talk to another human to schedule that appointment. the technology exists today, and we have the technology at Schein One for chat. Online chat is exploding around the world because it's easy, it's around the clock, it's something that somebody can do right when they're at that website, is they can see that little chat icon and start typing a message. And again, those call center employees can use that as a vehicle or a tool to be able to engage with patients and be able to get those appointments scheduled.
Communicate with them the way they like to communicate. Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that's brilliant. And I'll just give one great example of why, because you mentioned kind of the people, the workflow, the system, and the technology being critical to bring all this together. There are examples in the wild of organizations that have all of it and the technology, and they have all of that but not the technology. And as a customer, we feel it, right?
Right.
So when I call the Delta Platinum desk, a human being picks up the phone and says, "Thank you for calling the Delta Platinum desk, Mr. Taylor. How can I help you today?" Because the system recognized my phone number. It told the agent who I was. They had all my information ahead of me. They knew when my next flight was, and a person answered the phone. So for me, was it a great personal experience? Absolutely. You can have the belief that this is what you want. You can build the people and put them in place, but if you don't have the technology to create a stellar experience, you're going to have employee morale issues and patient satisfaction issues, right?
Completely agree.
So let's maybe have a similar conversation. I think call center is important. I actually think probably the easiest or quickest ROI for a group that's centralizing for the first time is with billing, revenue cycle management, and centralizing the cash flow RCM cycle.
That's typically where most group practices and DSOs start.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So from a technology perspective, what are we doing, and how are the tools we're providing helping these groups achieve a centralized billing office?
Yeah, so for us in product management, one of the things that we focus on when we talk to practices, when we visit dental offices and we watch how they do their work and ask, why are you doing that? What's going on there? Why is that important? Is, to your point, we find out that the revenue cycle management is probably the most critical piece for their business to centralize first. So for us in our software products that we provide to these group practices, for us, that was critical for us to get right. And so we wanted to make sure that when you're processing your insurance claims, you can process insurance claims for all of your locations at one time. And they also follow a set of standards and rules as they go through. We call it claim washing, but as they go through that, we check to verify and make sure that it's not missing critical information, so that it's something that if it's going to get easily rejected, we make sure it doesn't get easily rejected in the beginning, because we make sure before it even leaves your building that it's taken care of, and you get a notification that, hey, you need to fix this piece or fix this piece. So that's on the front end, right? Prior to that, let me back up just 2 seconds. Prior to that, one of the other things that's important for revenue cycle management is gathering eligibility details. Right. Yeah. And that's, again, something that we have focused on our systems being able to gather that information a few days before the appointment, so that when the patient arrives, you have at least at the basic information, whether they're currently covered or not. Some insurance plans do a great job of providing us a lot of details. I mean, we can see whether they met their max, their deductibles, how much they've spent this year. We can see whether they've had their pro fee for this year and what the date was, what their last FMX was. We've got a lot of those details depending on the insurance company, but we put that in the fingertips and do that globally and across your entire organization, and put that at the fingertips so that when they walk in the door, the team understands what they're covered for and what they're able to do. And so, those two pieces, the eligibilities and then sending the claims, is all on the kind of the front end or part of the visit. On the back end, from a centralization standpoint, adjudicating and managing claims is huge. I think that dental teams spend probably more time chasing those insurance claims and managing rejections or managing what happens with that claim once it leaves their practice. And that is a significant effort on the technology side to bring that all into one central place, so that you can have specific roles focused on that. And focused on that, again, to leverage your resources, focused on that across multiple locations. That's another piece of centralization that I think is really important, is that if you've got one person that can manage 2 or 3 offices claims, then that really does help from an ROI perspective, but it also gives you some standards too, because instead of you handling rejected claims 3 different ways, you're handling it one way across all of those offices.
Yeah, and I think that's about what we see. We see, depending on the size of the practice, obviously, a centralized billing specialist, who that's what they do for a living, can manage the full RCM, the full revenue cycle for 3, maybe 4 locations at that full scale. And so that's everything from eligibility verification. And again, your scale gets better the more advanced and automated your technology is, because you're replacing the human action with the technology behavior and automation. And so
because at that point, just really quick, we call it exception management is what we try to get to. We try to build technology so that the only thing the human needs to do is take care of the problems. So if everything's standard and it goes through just fine, then let the technology take care of that for you.
That's exactly and so then your scale gets even better, but at that rate, that's a really easy, obvious, measurable ROI. If I'm managing everything from eligibility to claims processing, EOB post-back denial management, the whole patient billing and insurance follow-up centrally with one person for 3 or 4 offices, now my costs go way down. But again, there's some soft ROI here, and that has to do with the effectiveness of those billers. If I've got people at each location that I'm paying to do the insurance billing or the RCM piece, it's not a full-time job. So that person is also answering the phone when they call, back to our previous conversation about call center. They're doing other sorts of activities to help manage the practice. They're doing some patient walkout, they're doing some patient intake. And the problem with that is, first of all, you don't want the person who answered the phone when your shiny new lead that you just acquired through your Facebook promotion or your billboard that you spent money on calls in to see if you have an available appointment. You don't want the person answering that phone to have just gotten off a 45-minute conversation with Aetna about a bunch of claims that were denied.
Absolutely.
That's not the person who's in the right frame of mind to take that call with that potential new patient, right? So it's a little bit of a separation of job function here and a specialization to create effectiveness. So now I've got people whose job it is, who get trained and retrained to bill and collect for my business. They're my centralized billing office staff. They're going to be much more effective at it. So not only am I spending less on those people, they're better at the job. So this is a double dip on ROI.
Let's talk about personality, and we could spend another hour just talking about hiring the right person for the job in a DSO. But like you said, what type of person do you want doing your billing? You want a detail-oriented person who focuses on the small things, who is very, very good at being able to find errors and being able to find smaller things inside of the needle in the haystack type of a thing. That's not the person you want answering a call for someone who's a new patient. You want bubbly personality. You want someone who's fun, who's loves people. Ask them about their day. How's your day going? How many kids do you have? That kind of stuff. That's a different type of person. So yes, you're exactly right. You don't want that person in the office to have multiple job functions to try to be able to do it. But then also from a technology perspective, just really quick, that same person who's in the office, if you don't centralize this, who's trying to do all those different things, quickly forgets, wait, what do I need to do when it's a MetLife claim? We need to do that when it's a MetLife claim, but when it's an Aetna claim, we need to do that. And so, but because they're focused on 3 or 4 different job functions, they quickly forget or don't remember. And so it takes them a lot more time to process than someone who, they are the MetLife specialist. They understand MetLife. They understand exactly what they need. They understand when a claim gets rejected for this reason, what exactly they need to do for it. They know who to call. They call into MetLife. Oh, no, I need to speak with Susie. That's the person that I know who can help me with this claim.
And when I call into MetLife, I'm calling in for all the outstanding claims for all of my practices, not the one I'm sitting in. And so I think the point that I want to drive home here is we're running low on time on the centralization conversation is our goal here with our customers is to help them obviously implement technology, but also construct their business to leverage that technology in an effort to reduce their cost per outcome. And this is something you'll hear me say a lot when I speak. everything, all of the primary objectives of your business, collecting revenue, producing dentistry, acquiring new patients, retaining existing patients, managing your hygiene, all these outcomes have a cost. When you implement technology effectively and you adjust your business model to leverage that technology, you can reduce your cost per dollar collected, cost per appointment confirmed, cost per patient acquired, right? If we can help you reduce your cost per, now as you expand, your overhead per production goes down.
Yep.
Your potential to produce, everybody wants to focus on improving and increasing the production line, and we get it. And there's all sorts of tools and techniques and consulting to help you improve case acceptance, expand your offering in terms of services that you provide, et cetera. That's great.
Get more butts
But
and seats,
if you're not
that kind of
reducing
stuff,
your overhead as you expand, the impact on profitability is lessened, right? If you're operating at a 60% overhead and you add $1 of production, you've only added 40 cents to your bottom line. But if you reduce your overhead by $1, you've added $1 to your bottom line.
Right.
So focusing on getting efficient down here on the overhead line it has the greatest impact, especially for smaller groups that are just starting out as they expand, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's not just purely about human capital expense reduction. Can I get rid of 3 people to do this? That's part of it. From a business perspective, we need to consider that. But it's about, could those 3 people do more work? Could they be optimized, right?
That's right. All right, so this has been a really good dialogue. I
Yeah.
really appreciate the insights from a technology perspective, obviously. I want to maybe for a minute pivot and share with the viewers a little bit about Schein One, because we've been talking about it. It's on our mugs. It's on our website.
That's right.
I'm not sure that necessarily everybody knows what that is. So Schein One from a high level perspective is the bringing together of Henry Schein's technology companies like Dentrix, Practice Solutions, Tech Central, some of our international products, and then the dental companies from Internet Brands, which is basically a big conglomerate of web companies.
Right.
And these are demand generation, lead acquisition type technologies. They have some that are very dental specific. So we take the technology products of a dental company, the dental companies of a technology, or the dental products of a technology company. We put them together, and now we have a global dental technology company, right?
Yeah.
Developing less of a software solution and more of a platform.
Right.
And so maybe you can speak to that and tell us what that looks like from an integration perspective, and maybe what the vision is there.
Yeah, for us, for the Schein One, the vision for us is really to create one solution for a practice to be able to manage and control all of the aspects of everything from patient demand generation, patient relationship management, practice management systems, and then all of the pieces of revenue cycle management that start from the patient visit and go all the way through the patient life cycle. And so for us, the whole concept and the reason we called it Schein One is we really wanted to be one simple solution that's easy to use. And so, right now, a lot of people think of the different products that are in Schein One's portfolio. And that's fantastic, because depending on your needs, there may be an individual product that meets your needs and it's something that you need. But if you're looking at a holistic solution for your organization, then really what we want to do is we want it to look and feel and become one application and one way for you to use it during your entire practice life cycle.
And I think, and so for us, obviously at the heart of this ecosystem is the practice management software.
Yeah.
And so from Schein One's perspective and vision, for centralization specifically, we have 2 practice management solutions. We have Dentrix Enterprise and Dentrix Ascend. So Dentrix Enterprise obviously is our tenured, mature platform that runs on a more traditional client server type model from a technology perspective, but it's centralized, single database, single patient record, all the things we talked about, and it benefits from having the look and feel and natural workflows that you would find in our core Dentrix application that you see in the majority of solo practices in the country today. And so that's one solution. And then on the other side, we have sort of this next-gen, future-proof, web-based platform that adheres to the latest in technology toolkits and functionality, and then lives in the cloud, and that's our Dentrix Ascend product. So maybe you can talk a little, but also centralized, also single patient record, also all of those things. and benefits from being browser-based. So instead of a large IT footprint, you just need something with internet access, in essence, to operate it. So,
Right.
maybe you can give us and our viewers some insight into our corporate strategy and vision for those two products, respectively, and then we can move on to a little bit about how we can help them evaluate those.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, how great to have a technology company that has two solutions.
Right.
You know, how great for you to be able to choose the one that meets your needs the most. I mean, typically you're going to a software company and the software company is selling you what they have. And that's something that, you know, we see a lot in different technology companies out there is, well, this is what I've got, so here's why it's really good. And so one of the things we have strategically decided is that both of these products are critically important for the growth of dentistry and group practices in this industry, and that we're going to invest in both. And it's a big investment for us to be able to keep two systems running and keep two systems updated and add new features to them and make sure that they work for our customers and meet our customers' needs. And so, you know, that to us is, I know that sounds a little simple, but our strategy is to continue to grow both of those and offer both products to our customers to meet their needs depending on what their needs are. I mean, the great thing, and your team, and maybe you can talk through this a second, is your team is the experts in positioning and being able to position that customer in front of those solutions and say, let's help you understand what your needs are and make sure we understand what your needs are, and then you're able to present, right?
Yeah, so that's a nice segue, because I did want to spend a minute just helping the viewers understand our internal segmentation. So meaning when we look at the dental landscape internally, we've segmented that into key strategic markets. And I mentioned at the beginning, my role is to oversee sales for our special markets in the same way yours is from a product perspective, mine is from a sales perspective. Yep. And so we break special markets up into, you know, nonprofit public health, hospital-based dentistry, and integrated care. We have some government in there, and then we have multi-site groups and DSOs. And that team, and so I've got dedicated specialists to the function of consultative practice management evaluations with multi-site groups and DSOs. And we go in with a very clear mission, and that is to assess and evaluate your business, your goals, your challenges, advise and consult technology solutions that can solve those challenges and help you achieve those goals, and then implement that solution and with the outcomes in mind. Right. And so that's a far cry from, say, for example, marketing every customer with more than one location with the same message, with the same software, with a one-size-fits-all, I'm the hammer, you're the nail approach to sales and marketing. And to your point earlier, that's the burden I think some other vendors face when they only have one product in their bag. And one of the things that my team really benefits from and really takes a lot of pride in is the fact that they're product agnostic, they're nonpartisan, unbiased. And so our goal and our mission is very clear, and that is to provide a very white glove consultative experience. Everything that you and I have been talking about, everyone on my team is equally well versed in, and we can go in and help these organizations assess, not just from a technology perspective, but from a business operations perspective, what is it going to take for you to get to the next level, and how can technology play that crucial role in helping you get there?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really love about working at Henry Schein is, for us, it's not just about the software and it's not just about the technology. Right. For us, it's about helping them run a better business and helping them achieve better patient care. You know, for us, it's kind of those two goals. And so we have technology products to help achieve that, but we have experts that have decades of knowledge about how to handle revenue cycle management, or how to handle patient acquisition, or how to handle even IT. I mean, we have, from an IT perspective, we have just vast knowledge of industry experts that can help these growing practices understand it. So for us, it's not about just selling a software product. And so that's what I really like about it. Sure, we have two solutions, but it's more than those two solutions. It's the people who come with that too.
Yeah, and I think the reason why that approach itself is so valuable for these smaller groups is they're not, as we talked about before, they're not in a position to have yet invested in a C-level ops person or tech person. So they don't have a CIO, the person who would normally be responsible for software evaluation and solving these problems. And so we take pride in equipping our people to fulfill that role on behalf of our customers, right?
Yep.
All right, so we have a few questions that we received. So I'm gonna pick a couple,
Great.
and we're gonna try to be cognizant of everyone's time here. But I do think it's good to answer questions from the people. So
Awesome.
yeah. All right, so the first one we have here is, and this is a great question because I get it all the time, and I think it's really important that everybody understand. The question is, if I have remote access to each of my offices from one location, aren't I already centralized? Do I need to really spend the time and money to migrate, right? And so this is a great question because it kind of uncovers a couple of misconceptions in the market space. One really common one is, I've got this back-end data aggregator, which is basically a system that's pulling data from all my separate databases and allowing me to visualize it in one place.
Right.
Therefore, I'm centralized.
Yep.
And the thing you have to remember, picture the total value proposition or benefit from centralization itself as a pie. Data aggregation is a critical benefit, but it's only one slice of that pie. Operational efficiency, cash flow management, human capital reduction, those are all the single patient record, those are all additional benefits of centralization that you lose if you're running a distributed network with data aggregation.
Well,
right?
it's like when people ask me that question, I say, okay, data access does not equal centralization.
Right.
The fact that you can see the data, it's a good step.
It's great,
but that's not centralization, because of all the other things we've talked about the entire time here is that you lose a lot of your processes, you lose a lot of your making sure your patients have a lower risk. I mean, just all those things that we've mentioned before. So,
well, and I think the other half of this though is data aggregation is one, but the other thing that this person is saying is, I have remote access to each of these offices from a centralized ops. So, and I've seen this before. So I've got a centralized billing office or business office, a CDO.
Yep.
I've got people doing the billing. I've got people remoting in and doing recall and some outbound call center type functionality.
Right.
And so that's actually, from an operational perspective, they're getting closer.
Right.
The challenge is now my scale for that team. I might not notice it at 5 locations, three or 5, because I'm going to have roughly the same ratio of people in that CBO as I would otherwise.
Yep.
But when I get to 10 or 15 or 20, I'm going to need so many more people in that CBO to manage those practices if I'm remoting into each one at a time. Because my ability to process an insurance check is whatever the cost is in time times 20.
Right.
My ability to process a batch insurance check or run a recall list or any of those centralized functions is going to be a multiple of however many locations I have. And so it doesn't scale. It blows up at a certain point, right?
Yeah, and I mean, also, again, think about the stuff we talked about earlier. That's not a single patient record either.
Oh, exactly.
And so from a singularity standpoint, you have me in multiple databases still. And so from a data aggregation standpoint still, you may say, well, great, I have remote access, and I also grab a copy of those databases and combine them. Well, wait, I'm double counted. Mm-hmm. I'm in your database here and in your database here. And then your technology team has to create rules and systems to merge accounts during the data aggregation. And it's just, it's interesting the steps that people will take to get around the real issue. And the real issue is, I just need to centralize and have a single database.
Yeah, and really, I would take that one step further and say, I really need to have a consult. Because there's a lot of other variables here. We obviously don't have time to get to all of them, but my team, as often as we say it's time to centralize, we say it's not time to centralize.
Right.
You've got 2 offices, you think you might be adding a third. It's kind of like, I've got a Honda Accord and I think I might be starting a family. Do I buy the Suburban today? Probably not, right?
Yeah.
It kind of depends on how pregnant you are.
Yeah.
And so, right? And so this consultation becomes really important because we might very well tell you it's not time, but when we get to where we've done due diligence on that third acquisition, we're at the point where we think we're going to move forward. Before we spend money on a solution that's not a long-term viable option for us on that third location, that's the time to talk about investing.
The other thing that I really like about your team, and I've got a chance to spend a lot of time with them, is you're not just you just want to talk to the customer once. You want to build a relationship and say, okay, get that third location, then let's talk again in 3 months. Let's talk and see where we're at.
Okay. So let's go to another question because I think we're coming up on time here, and I really like this question. How important is open access to the software when centralizing your business model? it's a bit of a broad question. Open access can mean a lot of things. Do I have access to read my data where I can mine it and analyze it and visualize it? Do I have access to write back to my system where I can plug in any random third-party system that I want to utilize as an option? So I'm going to let you field this one. How important is open access to the software, and then maybe I'll weigh in after.
Yeah. So when we talk about open software, it's an interesting word because open can be so many things.
Right.
When I think about it, I think a lot of people think open meaning open source,
right,
like open source software. But the reality behind open source software means that true open source software is everyone can program things and contribute to the core of that software. Now, most open source software is ran by large companies or large groups of engineers or people, and they have some sort of motivation for it. They want to do it for some reason, right?
Yeah.
But when you're talking about practice management systems, you don't want some other company writing software code and dropping it in your code that's not been tested, or you don't know if it's secure or anything like that. And so from an open standpoint, I like to think of it when people are asking me about open, it's open data access.
Right.
And the reality is you should have access to your data. You should be able to run reports, aggregate that data, take that data and put it into other systems, ERP, GL systems, those types of things. And all practice management systems that should function for group practices should have that capability for you to be able to take that data and get it. Now, when we're talking about writing that data back, we talked earlier about the fact that patient record is probably one of your most critical assets. And so we want to make sure if you're writing that data back, that you're writing it in a manner that's secure and that's safe. Right now, from a technology perspective, one of the biggest threats to the technological world right now is cyber terrorism and cyber terrorism, viruses, malware, all of those things. And so you need to be very careful about just putting data from any partner and any way they want back into your practice management system. And so what you do is you work with companies like us, and we have partners that we've verified that the connections to our software are secure and are valid and don't corrupt the data and compromise it in a way that could cause you long-term problems. And so, you should have access to the data, and the data should be open for you to be able to get information from it. But you also want to make sure that you put in place the right measures and find the right partners who can write data back in.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think I agree completely with that. The open access, read access to the data becomes critical for groups that are scaling, right? I need to analyze the data that I find valuable. Every group has its own secret sauce for growth and success, and their ability to implement that vision is largely dependent on the visibility they get into their business, which is achieved through reading your data, right?
Yeah.
I use the analogy that the data in your practice management software is like the thoughts in your business's brain, and the more access you have, it's like the ability to read the mind of your business, right?
Right.
And get those insights. So, all right, very good. We're gonna try to squeeze in one more question. How do I determine which practice management system is best for my DSO? And I'm going to let you weigh in here, but I'm going to start off just by saying simply my recommendation is you give us a call and let us. Now, obviously, there's all sorts of research and analysis that you can do on our website. We provide a bunch of tools and information that'll help you start to align your own vision with maybe the vision behind our systems. Yep. But ultimately, the amount of the depth of the variables that can affect that decision, the reimbursement model that you implement, the types of the patient demographic that you treat, the rate at which you're trying to grow. There's all sorts of questions that we uncover during our consultation that'll help us give you really good direction on which route to take. Yeah,
I completely agree with you. I think, if you're not ready to call your team yet, then I say you go to our websites. We have a website, dentrixmultisite.com, which is a great website because it takes both of those products and allows you to kind of see a high-level overview of what those products can do for you. Mm-hmm. But again, in the end, what it ends in is let's speak with one of our team members. For us, our team members are really focused on making your business successful. And so they're not going to offer you a product that they don't think means long-term that you're going to be successful.
That's right.
So that I completely agree. That's go to our website if you want to start out, and then after that, give us a call.
Okay. So we are out of time. Adam, this has been awesome as always.
Yeah,
I
thanks a lot, Vance.
I know we've had this conversation a couple times, and it's always a pleasure. I always learn something new. And
Me too.
get a new
Thank
insight.
you.
So, and for those who took the time to watch, we really appreciate it. I would invite you to reach out. Adam gave us a website. You should see on your screen now contact information. We would love to further this conversation and tailor it for your unique business needs and goals. And we look forward to speaking with you all soon. Thank you.